365 different ways we can reduce our carbon emissions on a personal level. Now of course, individuals on their own cannot solve climate change by themselves. Climate change is predominantly caused by our larger scale institutions, such as the largest companies. If we were to, as a society, change our electricity system to use renewable energy instead of fossil fuels, then many of the ways we use electricity would no longer have the same carbon footprint. And of course, if we changed our transportation system to use electric vehicles or used more public transport, etc., and eliminated most roads, that would also help to make society more carbon free. So even if you do not change your lifestyle, your carbon emissions would be reduced. But given that has not happened yet, here are some things that you personally can do today. Don't think it's all your responsibility to do your part, because there has been a lot of marketing by large fossil fuel companies to say that carbon footprint is all the fault of individuals, and they use that as an excuse not to stop their company-wide emissions. It is mostly caused by larger companies, but all that you can do is try to change the larger social structure through protest and political power, and also make changes in your individual life. So, reducing your carbon footprint is not enough. You have to also raise awareness, but it's a good start and something you can do. But don't let people think it's all your responsibility. It is the responsibility of society as a whole as well. So, without further ado, let's get into some ways we can all reduce our carbon footprints. Renewable energy. So, no matter how much you reduce your power use, you're still going to be using some electricity. So, the best thing to do is to make that electricity that you do use green renewable energy. You can get a solar panel if you can afford one. Often governments give a rebate to help you pay for the cost, and the costs are reducing each year. You can also check with your electricity company if they have a green power option. Green power is where they commit to increasing their renewable energy percentage of their production by the amount that you purchase as green power. 2. Sun and shade. Now, you can reduce your cooling and heating energy use by using sun and shade to keep your home at a comfortable temperature. For areas that get too hot, you can train vines up trellises on the hot side of the house. That will help to keep the walls of the house cool. You can also plant trees that will provide shade in summer and block cold wind in the winter. If it's a deciduous tree, it will lose its leaves in the wintertime and let more sun into your house. You can also install awnings over the windows, and you can angle them so that it will block the sun in the summertime. lower sun at winter time. And the color that you paint your house can also affect the temperature. If you're in a warm area, using a light color will reflect more of the sun's heat back. If you're in a cold climate, use a dark color. You can also use a roof that has reflective or absorbent coatings to control the heat. You can also check your house for anywhere that wind and air can get in. Hold a candle next to a window or door frame on a windy day to see if it flickers and any drought is getting in that needs to be plugged up. This can stop heat sneaking out of the house. You can use drought excluders around doors, such as snakes. You can put it around the letterboxes, filling gaps with silicon or wooden beaming. Plug your chimney with a chimney balloon. That's a device that sits a foot above the fireplace and stops warm air escaping up the chimney. Just be careful to remove it if you light a fire. You can also reduce heat escaping with the use of insulation. Without enough insulation, your roof can lose up to a third of the heat of your house. Look for insulation with a high R value. That means it's more resistant to heat flow. This will keep the house cooler in summer and warmer in winter. If you replace old windows with double or triple glazing, that also makes a big difference to the heat that escapes. But of course, double glazing can be an expensive option. One obvious and cheap option is of course to close your curtains or blinds every night to keep the warmth in and act as an extra layer of glazing. This works well if your curtains have thick thermal linings. You can also put insulation under your floor. You should also be careful to seal any gaps between floorboards if they are uncovered. The best insulating products come from natural or recycled materials such as newspaper, wool or hemp. You can also insulate your pipes and your boiler, which can reduce heat escaping from your hot water system to make it more efficient. For your hot water system, it's best to use a heat pump, which is much more efficient than gas or electric hot water systems. Set the temperature to around 50 degrees Celsius. You don't need hotter than that because if it's too hot you'll just be adding extra water. The less hot water you use, the less energy you will be using. Also make sure that your thermostat is located in an area that isn't heated by a fire or a lamp or something like that. Otherwise it will give inaccurate readings and overcool your home. For your home's lighting, maximize your use of natural light. Paint your walls in light colors. Keep curtains and blinds open. Make sure your windows are clean. Put your workspace in a room with plenty of natural light so that you don't have to use artificial lighting too much. Of course, for your lights that you do use the more efficient ones, the compact fluorescent light bulbs. Get rid of any old style lights which are less efficient. Obviously turn off the lights when you're not using them. one that has more energy starters and is more efficient. Turn off electrical appliances when you're not using them, because many are still using electricity when they are in standby mode. The appliances that use the most electricity are things like heaters and coolers, air conditioning. They use many more times electricity than something such as a TV. Computers use a relatively large amount of electricity too. Make sure that the seals on your fridge are not worn out, and don't overfill your fridge, or it will have to work overtime all the time to keep cool. With your mobile phones, unplug the chargers when you're not using them. Even if the charger is plugged in, but the phone is not plugged into the charger is still using electricity, which is just going to waste. When you get a new phone, recycle it properly, donate it to a recycling place to reduce the amount of mining that has to be done to make new mobile phones. Also try to replace your mobile devices less often, because they use a lot of energy and rare materials to produce, and the upgrades usually don't change that much. When you're cooking, only use the main oven when necessary. If you use a smaller toaster oven most of the time, then you use much less energy. Only use the big main oven when you're cooking something very large. Use the microwave where possible, because that uses far less electricity as well. It doesn't work very well for thawing frozen foods though, so it's best to put frozen foods in the fridge the night before you're going to use them, to avoid having to thaw them. It's best to cook in batches if you're going to be making a lot of food, rather than cooking individually each time, and then you can freeze the portions. It uses a lot less energy to do that and to reheat them than to cook new meals. It also saves you a lot of time. Use the pans which are the correct size for the ring, and don't use the bigger pans when you don't need them, because it just wastes more electricity. If you're going to be steaming things, get those cookers that work on a couple of levels with the potatoes or whatever cooking in the bottom in the water, and then the energy rises through the holes in the next one above it, which is sitting on top, to steam the peas or whatever. You don't normally need to preheat ovens, so don't bother doing that unless it's for pastry, breads, souffles. The oven typically heats up fast enough to not affect the cooking times of other things, so don't worry about it. Don't open the oven door while it's cooking, just look through the glass door. When you open the oven door, 25% of the heat escapes, and then it has to reheat it up again. When the food is almost cooked, you can turn the oven off and keep the door closed, and it will continue to cook in the residual heat. It's also more efficient to cook one-pot meals such as paellas and minestrone styles and casseroles than to cook in separate pans. For your refrigeration, your fridge or freezer should be located in a cool spot away from the cooker and any other sources of heat. The coils at the back of the fridge should also have the dust removed from them every now and then. That can help to improve the efficiency by 30%. Fridges should be operating at around 3 to 5 degrees Celsius. Freezers work at around -15 degrees Celsius. If you put them colder than this, you're just wasting energy and money. If you get ice building up in the freezer, do a defrost, and that helps to make it more efficient and work better. Check the seal of the refrigerator. You can put a piece of paper in the door and see if it easily slips through when the door is closed. You can change the seal if it has a leak. garbage or give it away to someone. Instead, recycle it, send it to a recycle place. It's much more efficient than using an older fridge. When you are making hot water for your coffee or whatever, don't fill up the kettle higher than you need to, or it will just take longer and use more energy to heat up a lot of water you're not going to use. When you're doing your washing of the dishes, it's more efficient to do it by hand than using a dishwasher, especially if it's for a small number of dishes. It's not good if you run it under a running tap though. You should plug up the sink and wash it that way. For things which are quite dirty, you can soak them for a while before you put them in a dishwasher if you are going to use one, and then it will use less water and energy to clean them. When you're cleaning up, use reusable sponges and gloves instead of paper towels or disposable wipes. Using microfiber gloves can help to get dirt and dust rather than needing to use cleaning products. Choose products that work well at low temperatures, such as floor cleaners that work well with cold so you don't have to use hot water. And it's best to use concentrated products to reduce the amount of packaging and transport that need to be used. With your personal hygiene, showering is better than using a bath. Baths use almost 3 times as much water as a shower does, as long as the shower is not too long. A 5-minute shower or so. And don't turn the pressure up higher than you need to, and don't make it hotter than it needs to be. It's better to just use a bit of hot water and less cold water than using a lot of hot water and more cold water to make it the same temperature. It's better to use normal hard soap than to use the liquid soap, because the liquid soap just is not very efficient. It gets used up quickly and has the packaging and everything, it has to be transported, so it's kind of a hassle. When you're brushing your teeth, obviously you don't keep the rotor running all the time. You just, you wet the things that you need to and turn the tap on when you need it and turn it back off again. When you're drying your hair, it's best to just dry it with a towel rather than using a hair dryer if you don't need to. With shavers, you don't really need to change them that often. Some people change them like almost every time they shave, but you only really need to change them when they get noticeably blunt or when they start to get kind of rusty or whatever, so then you can throw them away to get them clean, but don't change them more often than you need to. Rechargeable electric shavers can be good too, to reduce the amount that you have to throw away. You can also get ones that can be sharpened, the razor cartridge sharpener, they're pretty good. For washing machines, front loaders are better than top loader washing machines. Although top loaders tend to have a larger capacity, front loaders only use a small fraction of the water and energy. Also, it's best to wash in cold water rather than hot water. And when you're drying the clothes, it's best to hang them outside to dry rather than using a electric tumble dryer. If you are using a tumble dryer, remember to change the lint regularly or it will become inefficient. Now, for your water usage, it's best if you can capture rainwater using a water tank. That captures the water that falls on the rain through the gutters. These are used for toilets, washing machines, garden, so forth. Leave your car outside when it's raining to wash it naturally rather than especially washing it yourself. If you do need to wash your car, do it with a sponge in a bucket rather than using it with a hose. In your backyard, avoid leaf blowers. They are really very bad. Motors on them very dirty. Just use a rake instead. When you're mowing, use an electric one rather than a petrol one. Or better still, let the garden grow naturally. When you let the grass grow longer, they can go to flower. The bees and so forth can enjoy them. Or you can replace lawns with other more native sort of plants, which is much better for the ecosystem. More different types of insects and bugs can live there. The birds will get attracted to your place more. Planted trees if you have space. Obviously the tree will absorb a lot of CO2, and they're good for attracting wildlife as well. Set up a compost system so that your household waste doesn't go into the landfill and turn into methane. By putting a compost bin out or a bokashi bucket, then your kitchen waste can turn into fertilizer, which also traps carbon. If you're in a small place, a bokashi bucket is a little Japanese composter which can stay inside your house. It can sit underneath the sink in the kitchen, and it doesn't have smell because of a sort of organic chemical system that they use, and that creates a healthy fertilizer that you can use in your garden. If you've got more space, you can make a wormery in the garden, and if you don't want to get a worm system or little things, you can just dig a big hole in the garden and then put your organic waste in there, and then put a cover on the top to stop fermenting, and that can be broken down by the worms. They'll dig into this little tunnel that you put in the ground, this little hole, and they'll eat up the food, and then they'll spread it through the garden as they tunnel around. And of course, it's good to have a garden so you can grow some of your own food. Avoid chemicals, grow little lettuces and vegetables and things. Plant some fruit trees is good if you got some space. The trees will absorb some carbon dioxide and they'll also give you some free fruit. You can put in some flowers to attract the little insects, which is nice. If you don't have a backyard for a garden, you can have some little herbs and things on your windowsills. Things like basil, parsley, stuff work well on the windowsill. Spring onions are really good because you can just cut the tops off of them and then they just keep growing back. And they're quite hardy, they don't need much. Even if you go to the store and you buy some spring onions and you chop up the leaves, keep the little root part at the end to stick it in a bit of soil, and it will grow back. If you're building a house, it's good to use a lot of wood. Wood is a very green building material. It locks up CO2, and it doesn't take much to process it either. Cement is one of the worst. It uses a lot of carbon to produce, so it's best to use a lot of wood if you can. When you're buying food, it's best to only buy foods which are in season, which means that they are being produced locally at the time. If they're not in season, that means that they are being made overseas, so they have to be shipped while frozen all the way across here, which means they're less fresh, and also that a lot of pollution is caused in the transport and in the refrigeration. Good to grow food locally in your backyard, or if you don't have enough space, you can have a street garden. You can grow on the footpath and set up little local footpaths where everyone can share the food that grows there. Makes the street looks nicer as well. For your food, it's best to also eat less meat, because meat takes a lot more to grow it. The way it works is basically like you can buy either the plant foods, or you can buy meat which is from an animal that ate a lot of plant foods. So normally if you're buying cow, for example, beef, the masses of grain goes into one cow to produce a smaller amount of food, so it's not as efficient. Also, the cow's that digestive system involves a lot of bacteria breaking the food down, which creates a lot of methane, so they burp out a lot of methane, which is quite a potent carbon gas. So it's best to eat more vegan sort of foods and less meat. You don't really need that much protein and things from meat. You can get a lot of these things from vegetables. And so if you do want to eat meat, then don't have as much. And of course you could be completely vegan as well, which is better still for the environment. Generally, if you are going to eat meat, the smaller animals are less carbon intensive because they grow faster, meaning that they have consumed less food in their lifetime, and it's just a more efficient way of producing meat. So chickens are more efficient than the pigs, and pigs are more efficient than cows. Fish are not very good though, because fish are being over depleted. There's not many fish left in the ocean, so don't eat too many of those. With your clothing, it's best to try to make clothing last. Avoid faster fashion clothing. Fashions change all the time, and it's artificial. They make something, then when people buy it, they obviously want to sell more stuff. So they immediately say, oh, that's not fashionable anymore, you need to buy this new thing, and throw the old one away. And it's just constant, it's very inefficient. It's all about maximizing the amount of money that you spend, rather than about producing something which is actually useful. So you can shop vintage, get second-hand clothes, share clothes with your friends when you want to change different outfits. If you've worn something a few times and don't want to use it anymore, it's best if you can give that to a friend, and then they can give you something of theirs and keep your wardrobes fresh. You can sell your old clothes. Now, donating clothes to like the Salvation Army or Goodwill or that, actually most of the clothes that go to these places gets thrown away, only a small amount gets sold, so it's best to try to avoid just buying more things and then giving them away, because a lot of it just gets wasted. Try not to buy more things than you actually need. Most of the things in your wardrobe for a lot of people are things that actually you buy them and you think you'll wear them all the time, but then you hardly ever wear them, so it's best to be aware of your favourites of clothes and just have a few of those rather than buying more that you don't really use anyway. When you're shopping for food, avoid things which are overly packaged. Individually packaged things, get them in bulk is better. Don't go shopping when you're too hungry, or you'll just buy extra things. That's like a psychological thing. Look at bulk food and wholesale healthier sort of foods with less packaging, which can be cooked up, natural ingredients, less processed things is better. And when you're buying stuff, it's best to spend your money that you want to spend on things like services, experiences and things, rather than buying just junk, because they tend to just wear out or be obsolete. You lose interest in them. But if you buy a experience, then you have that for your whole life, so that's a nice thing. If something you have breaks, then it's best to try to get it fixed rather than replacing it. Some things are built just to break down, but often you can get them repaired and make them last. Try to reduce packaging in the things that you buy, non-perishable items in bulk. Choose products sold in refillable containers. Obviously, we often see things with plastic packaging and we think, oh, we'll just recycle it, so that's fine, but recycling isn't that efficient. It's best to avoid buying things with plastic packaging in the first place. And avoid aluminium foil as well, because that's very resource intensive to make aluminium foil. Avoid things with mixed materials like plastic and foil mixed together, because they can't really be recycled. try to reuse plastic containers. So with plastics and so forth, recycling is a last resort. You try to avoid them, then if you do need to use them, you try to reuse them yourself, and then you recycle them when you no longer need anything. Then it goes recycling as a first option. Pack your lunch to avoid single serves of foods. Avoid polystyrene, which cannot be recycled at all. And try to buy things with sustainable packaging, which are biodegradable. Now with computers, laptops are more efficient than desktop computers. They can use 90% to less energy. Don't bother getting a computer which has a lot more power than you will actually be needing. Just get, whatever you need depending on what you're going to be using it for. Computers can be used secondhand, so when you finish using yours, delete all your stuff off of it, and you can donate it to an organization that will sort of refurbish it and give it to charity for schools and so forth, people that need them. Now with transport, we should try to avoid driving as much as possible. Half the oil extracted is used for transport. Now, we should walk where possible. If it's within 4 to 5 miles, it's best to walk there because we're supposed to walk 10,000 steps a day according to health experts anyway, so it's a great way to get some exercise and avoid using fuel unnecessarily. Use a bike. Bikes are not just for exercise. Many people think bikes are something that old middle-aged men use on the weekends, accountants and lawyers and so forth. And they get fancy, expensive bikes and put on fancy bicycle clothing and go racing around. But bikes, in many countries, are seen just as a normal way of transport. Bikes are really good technology. They were actually invented after cars, but they still became much more popular than cars because they're cheap and they're efficient. They give you exercise, they get you from place to place. You don't need to sit in traffic for a long time. Getting road rage, you can quickly and efficiently go from one place to another pretty fast, depending on the cycling infrastructure in your area. Some areas are much more bike friendly than others. Some have a lot of traffic, they don't have bicycle lanes and so forth. So if it's safe to cycle in your area, it's definitely better to do that. You'll find you have more freedom, you can easily move from one place to another. You don't need to worry about parking as much. You don't need to worry about traffic. You just go there and it's fast and easy and efficient. And you don't need to wear special clothes, just get a bike that's like more of an upright bike, not one of those ones where you have to lean forward. You don't need not racing, just get a nice, comfortable cycling bike, which you sit upright, you wear normal clothes, and hopefully it's not too hot or not too many hills, you don't need to like a shower and stuff afterwards, but if you do, hopefully your work has got like some shower facilities and so forth. And your own bike, if it's at all possible. Our next option is, of course, public transport. If you're looking at a freeway, if there's 30 people on the freeway, it's going to take up a lot less space if it's 30 people on the bus than if it's 30 people in cars. And in most places, buses get priority over cars. Many places, the buses have a special lane that cars aren't allowed to go in, and the bus just zooms past while all the traffic is just sort of stuck, waiting for their chance to zip into the next lane. So buses are premium, they're above cars, and trains are great too. Trains, you just go into this little carriage and you sit there and you get straight to the destination. You don't need to really worry about going here and there and following the roads and going over bridges and all this rubbish paying toll fees. So public transport is of course your second best choice. Then if you don't need to drive, if you live way out in a suburb in the middle of nowhere where there's nothing to do and no food and no one to meet and nothing to do unless you get in a car and drive somewhere else, then you have to drive, don't you? So, best to get an electric car if you can, because even if your electricity grid is powered by gas, coal, then the car is more efficient, so it's using less of that than the amount of CO2 that would be burned if you were just burning petrol in your car. Or you can get a hybrid car, one that works on a combination of electricity and fuel. Don't get a bigger car than you need, just get a small car, because the less weight that you have, the less energy it takes to move it around. Most people get big, heavy cars, especially in America. It's a fashion there. And it's not because they're more useful, not because they're more comfortable, they're annoying, they're harder to park, they take up a lot of space. It's best to get a smaller car. You can move around more easily, you can park easier, you use a lot less energy, and people won't look at you and think that you're an idiot for getting a bigger car than you need to. Try to reduce air conditioning use in a car. It's best to wind the windows down a bit, much more efficient, unless you're going at more than like 100 miles an hour, 100 kilometers an hour, in which case aircon might be more efficient because of the drag caused by having the windows down. But most of the time we're driving in the city, so it's not going to be going that fast. Drive smoothly, try not to have a lot of accelerating and slowing down and so forth, because if there's like traffic lights and stuff, like it doesn't matter if you get to a traffic light faster, it's not really going to get you to your destination faster. You just sort of cruise along, and then you can be more efficient, not wasting energy for no reason. That's stressful too. If you're traveling, it's best to go somewhere locally so you don't need to take a plane. Planes are not very efficient. Actually, the efficiency of a plane is similar to the efficiency of a car. But the difference is that planes, typically you're going a very long way, so you're getting that many more kilometers of moving, which means a lot more energy is being used. So try to avoid going a long way for your holidays. Try to check out somewhere locally instead, it's more efficient. If you're going to traveling by train is really good. They use a lot less CO2, and some places have really great train networks like Europe. You can go pretty much anywhere pretty quickly too. You don't have to worry about driving or whatever, it's less stressful. If you can share a car, drive together with more people, having a whole car just for one person is not very efficient. Best if you can share. If you are going to use a fossil fuel car, then yeah, best to use one that uses a more efficient one, E10 or whatever. And of course, the most important part is trying to create climate action on a larger scale. Right, to elected representatives. In fact, don't just write, just go to whatever protest or activities you can, join some local organization that does political action. Obviously vote for whichever party has the best climate change and fossil fuel reduction policies. Be allowed to ask for change. Even the politicians that you do like, demand that they do more for the environment. Know that that's something that you care about, and you'll only vote for them if they have strong environmental policies. And then even governments that are less likely to do carbon action will say, okay, well, everyone wants it. You know, that's not going to be a political issue anymore. Left and right, whoever, they all want carbon action. So, you know, that could be a bilateral thing, no longer political. If you know someone who is a bit of a on the fence of carbon skeptics of guy, then try to convince them if they're like a diaphanate, don't waste your energy, because these people don't listen to reason. But some people, like, they're just not that well informed, so you can talk to these people and stuff, inform them and stuff. So there's some different ways that you can reduce your carbon footprint and make a bit of an impact on climate change. Can you think of some other things that you could do yourself? Are there some actions that you recommend that I missed? It would be great if you could leave those in the comments. If you have a favorite carbon-friendly organization, then let us know about it. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe so you can see more similar things. Check out some of our playlists. I hope you have